All right, welcome to another DFW Running Talk. I'm Chris Detzel, and before we get started, this is a series of 10 people over the next 10 days that are generally from Dallas, Fort Worth area that are running Boston Marathon. And one of our guests is Tre Montigue. Did I say that right, Tre?
That's correct. Tre Montigue.
Sweet, Tre. How are you?
Doing well.
Appreciate you getting on, man.
Yeah.
So you've run Boston Marathon, I think, in the past. How many Bostons have you run?
I've been running since 2011, so this will be 16.
Dang. Let's do this because I'm very intrigued. When you first ran Boston, so we're not going to go through all your Boston marathons, but I do want to talk a little bit about, if you remember, your first and how you got into that and
Oh,
how
yeah.
exciting was it when you first did it? Tell me a little bit about that story.
Yeah, it was really a crazy story. I'd been running for almost 20 years, and I was one of those guys that did 4 to 6 miles 3 times a week. Never had a bucket list of running a marathon. Hey, other people did it. Good for them. That's great. But my running buddy, partner I worked with, Jason Couch, and became my coach as he was, I guess, training for a marathon. He hired a coach. And the next thing I know, for a few months, I was running 8 miles 3 times a week. Again, I wasn't training for anything. He qualified for Boston, I think, in Houston of 2010. And then one day he said, let's sign up for this 10K. And I went and ran a 10K, and I got an age division award. I was like, that's pretty cool. And then 8 days later was the first Dallas rock and roll half. And people said, if you're running 8 miles, you could do a half marathon. So I went out there. I registered like 20 minutes before the close at the expo. So I paid all kinds of extra fees. Next day showed up. I was so late. They put me in like corral 5,000 and some odd runners. So I spent the whole time weeding through people and ended up like low 300s out of, I think we had 13,000 some odd the first time. But I remember the end, like the last quarter mile or less, we turned corner. The Longhorn marching man was there, and I went to Texas. I shot him a hook 'em horns and sprinted to the finish and did really well. So I went back to work, and the next day or so went, man, I've never thought of running a marathon, but now I think I want to run a marathon. So I didn't tell anybody. I was supposed to work a few weekends away, and someone traded with me. So I said, well, I'm off that weekend, and there's this thing called a Big D Marathon over at Fair Park.
I remember it. It's my first marathon, by the way.
Yeah. So I had 26 days to train, and I get on a website for Hal Higdon. He's got like a 24-week plan. I'm like, hey, if I can jump in the last 4 weeks here and stick with it, I got a good shot at this. And of course, my buddy's just messing with me, going, yeah, you could do that. And if you could run this pace, you could run Boston with me. So that day he actually ran the half. We ran together for about 4 miles and crossed over the bridge there at the lower end of White Rock and looked back and stand there with his hands on his hips thinking, I'm sure there's no way he can do this. And I was actually a couple minutes ahead. Now I know you really can't bank time, but I just started slowing down by mile 19 or so. And when we got back into the park, I'm fuzzy in the head, and I hear him bellow, you got to go now, because he was looking at the clock, and I guess I was pretty close. So what I thought was sprinting to the end, and I made it by less than a minute. And he came and congratulated me. He's, I can't believe you did that. And I said, you told me I could do that. He said, I was just messing with you, man. I thought it must be pretty good. So the next year I overtrained, ended up running way too many miles in way too light shoes on way hard surfaces, and I ended up fracturing my spine in 2 places. I found out 7 weeks before Boston. So this was a no exercise for 3 or 4 months, I was told. And I thought, I'm going to run Boston if I have to crawl to the finish on my one good arm. I rested 2 weeks, did some light running. I did a slow 14 miler, I think, before. But then it was the best weather they'd had in 40 some years. To this day, it's the best weather, I think, since 71 or so. It was 41 degrees, tailwind, and I just mentally pushed myself to run almost the exact same time, a few seconds off. So again, qualifying by less than a minute. I collapsed into a wheelchair at the end, went to the medical tent for 2.5 hours, got 3 liters of fluid. After a couple hours, my wife finally found me. My family thought I was dead. She's, oh, you looked like, I was like, hey, you should see me 2 hours ago. No, I feel great now. They throw a girl on a cot next to me. She vomits everywhere. We look at each other. She's, I'm never going to do another marathon. Me neither. I'm like, the body shouldn't be doing this. And then the next day I signed up for another marathon. But yeah, it was a crazy how I got sucked into it. But when Jason ran a 3:06, his best time ever, that Boston, I thought this was fun to do. I got to get back and do it again. So I trained better and smarter to run faster, and ran about 9 minutes faster at the Air Force Marathon, which was during registration.
What was that time? I'm curious.
21.
Okay. So you're about
to
got it.
Yeah, my time was 3:30, I think, at the time. But that was the first year they were going to rank you. So I knew I needed to be better than that. I ended up finding I wanted to heal as much as I could and then
Yeah.
train as long as I could. So I found a marathon in between the 2 weeks of Boston registration and literally ran that time. And as we're going back to the hotel, my wife was driving and I'm registering for Boston. So that's how I got into my second of what's now I've qualified for next year too. So that'll be 17th straight Boston.
Oh my gosh, like, gosh, this is amazing, and I love that, and that this guy that didn't hardly run any miles, and your
Yeah.
first marathon, you qualify, and then you F up some of your spine.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's crazy.
And of course, now I've had all the injuries. Anything that, oh, I've had that one too. Yeah, that one too.
Yeah.
Yeah, both sides of that's where they're. So,
So you've done six. I guess you're about to do 16, then
right.
17 the next year. You qualified. So tell me about why Boston, why it's so special, why you want to continue to do it. Any story or two that comes to mind that you really enjoyed and that, look, when I go, I don't run it, but my wife is running it her 13th time coming up. And
Nice.
so yeah. And so I get to see the atmosphere, it pumps me up. And so I'm trying to capture some of that Boston stuff for those that haven't run it, that want to run it and those things. And you obviously have tons of experience.
Yeah, Boston, we all say it's like the Super Bowl for runners, which it is. You feel very special to be there. Half to two-thirds of the runners have never run Boston before. So there's such excitement. And as you get older, that's a really cool adrenaline rush to just be around all the people that are excited to be there. And I'm excited to be there. Every year is just another storied adventure. It's a state holiday. People
Mhm.
mostly aren't working. They're either drunk on the sidelines or run the race or at the Red Sox game.
Yeah.
But there's such support, I think, that, and it's the history of it nothing compares. Actually, I was the last group that got into New York through the three strike rule back in 2014, and I run
Mhm.
that every year now. So every year I run New York and Boston, and people always ask, you've run both so many times. What's the greatest one?" I'm like, New York is the world's largest, and half the runners have never run a marathon there. So there's again tons of
Yeah.
excitement going through the boroughs, having so many runners. But it's that history of Boston. It's just a big deal for the whole city of Boston, and it's pretty special. It's pretty special.
Did you run that year that of the bombing? What was that
I
like?
did.
'Cause obviously you
Yeah,
did. What was
that was funny. That was our third year. Buddy Jason Couch and I ran four together before he got injured and really couldn't run anymore. But that year, I ran my fastest time and it would be my fastest time for 9 years. Of course, couldn't celebrate it, but it was the only year I was in the first wave. We've redone the waves now, so they're much smaller and everyone's faster. So I finished an hour and a half before the bombing. We were in the hotel when we heard about an explosion, and people were saying maybe it was a gas line. And then when we got in the elevator, my wife and I heard that there was a second. And so we went to the room, turned on the TV, and of course, it was everywhere. So
yeah,
it was pretty scary in that way, but it did not deter us from going back. And it
yeah.
certainly didn't. If anything, it really bolstered the city's support for the marathon and for the runners that do it. And I was so glad the next year to see so many people undaunted coming back and running it.
I remember hearing Obama's speech and part of it, and just it was just wow. And for that piece of it, but the other thing that was really interesting to me was how many people started to sign up from then on out. Before,
Yeah.
from my understanding, it was somewhat not easy. If you qualify, you're going to get in. Now it's not like that
No.
because of after what happened in the
Yeah, it's
bombing.
gone up and down over the years. You can look online and see the history. It's been
Yeah,
faster, it's been slower. But yeah, it's grown in support a big time since then. Now I think the qualifying time is somewhat like 16 minutes faster than when I first qualified. And then you get to be
crazy.
ranked, so it may be even faster than that. So it's definitely grown. It's definitely got a lot of interest, which is great. It's great for the sport. Like I said, it took me 9 years to best my Boston time. And now,
Oh,
I ran a fairly decent time to qualify this time, a 3:17. Ran the same time to the second in both Sydney and New York that fall. And it puts me back at 16,600 something. I'm in the bottom third of the qualified runners with what was a pretty good time just a few years ago, but that's just how fast it's gotten.
people are faster, and some of that is they're able to train more, they're able to they know more. We all know more about
Sure.
running than we did 10 or 15 years ago, and technology has changed, and I think that's helped a lot
Yeah.
as well. Is there any specific Boston that's your favorite? And if so, why? A particular year?
They're also different, but certainly the first one where I remember about mile 22 thinking, again, I was looking around at everybody going, the human body shouldn't do this. I shouldn't be doing this. Nobody should be doing this. But I had to hang in there because at mile 24 is my family. And my wife, Beth, she's waving at me with the kids and I'm waving back. She said, you looked great. And I said, I should get an Academy Award. Literally thought I was going to die. And after seeing them, I just kept leaning forward because if you don't catch yourself, you'll fall on your face. So I just stumbled to the end. Like I said, I literally couldn't speak, pointed at the wheelchair, collapsed into it. And the rest was the history of my first one. The second one was the hot one. It was 83 in Hopkinton. It was sunny. It was like being at the beach. You could smell Hawaiian tropic everywhere. People just lathering on sunscreen. It got up to, I think, 90 by the end. And that was just miserable. I broke about mile 10 and just walked the rest of the way in. Nobody asked your time that night. They're like, did you finish? High five.
That's all that matters.
Strong work. And then the bombing was the next year. And then the next year, Meb won. I remember being at mile 23 and someone had a sign, Meb won. I couldn't believe it.
It's pretty amazing.
It was very emotional because he's such a great person, maybe more than he is a great runner. And I've met him many times and spent some time talking to him. So he's my running idol, as he probably is for many people. Yeah. But that was just a magical year. And then the next year, it rained and I didn't have my glasses on, but I crossed the finish line and looked at my watch. I thought, no, that can't be. And I asked somebody and I thought, oh man, I hope that's not official. I missed my best time from the bombing by 1 second. And I could have planned that. Like if somebody told me I was 10 feet from the finish, I would have sprinted through and gotten a better time. But it ended up taking me 9 years to get a best time, better than that one, and did better even the next year. So
what's your best time?
What's that?
What was your best time?
At Boston, it was 3:14.
Okay.
Yeah, what's your best time was 3:10 at Tokyo just a few years ago. And that was, again, great weather. I feel like as I've gotten older, and Meb says the same thing. He says before when he was young, he would kill people in the heat. Now the heat kills him. Yeah, I'm very weather dependent on these things. The heat can be really tough. And I've done all the majors, and I did London 8 days after I did Boston, that torrential rainstorm. Literally, it poured like a monsoon the whole race, except for I think mile 22. It lightened up to just raining a little, and then it went back about a mile later. Only at about a mile of that. And then I turned around and less than 6 days later, I'm in London, and on Monday it says hottest London marathon on record, and it still is the hottest. To go from one extreme to the next was tough to do.
What are you looking forward for this next Boston 2026?
Just another great experience. I've had good training. I don't really have anything to go for. I've already qualified for both New York and for Boston. The next ones, I guess there's the age group world championship that possibly could be a goal. I've done all the cities they've done it in so far. We've done it in London, we've done it in Chicago, Sydney, New York, and now it's going to be in Cape Town. So I'm doing Cape Town on May 24th, which is just under 5 weeks after Boston. I hope to do well at Boston, because you always want to do well at Boston and to stay healthy. I feel at my age that staying healthy is the hardest and most important thing. When you're the guy, I'm a member of the DFW running club and we have social meetings every Wednesday night, and there are all these young people, and that's again inspiring to hang around all these young people. But I'm like, at your age, you're in your 20s, like you just put on a pair of shoes and you go out there and run. But if you want to keep racing at my age, you're doing a lot more stuff. So I do cross-training cycling, but also do weights, strength training, both upper and lower body. And I think that's really key to being as healthy as I am. Because when I started doing this, and I dreamed of, after doing a couple, man, wouldn't it be great to do 10 in a row? Because then you don't have to have that ranking. You just hit your time. And then, of course, you start seeing these guys run by, they say QCC, which is the Quarter Century Club. And now, of course, that's what my goal is now.
Yeah, the 25 years, a few other people that are trying to hit that. How old are you, Tre?
I'm 62.
62 and still running extremely strong. I think that's pretty amazing, and that's an inspiration to me. Anything that you would just tell our listeners before we go about Boston Marathon, and any kind of words of wisdoms or thoughts?
It's definitely a great goal. If you want to run Boston, you want to train for it, there's a lot of information out there from experienced runners, from coaches, et cetera, that can make you a better runner. I'm a believer in things like the 80-20 rule and specific stuff like shoes and nutrition, all that. You kind of pick up on your own. I think there's no one size fits all for that. But I do think that having a goal and figuring out what works best for you is the best way of getting there. I don't run every day. I run every other day, even in training. And I only train about 8 weeks to 10 weeks maybe for a marathon. Again, for me, it's partly just staying healthy.
Yeah.
I'm not I don't do a lot of VO2 max. I do intervals, and I'm not going to go out on the track anymore and do 400 meters with rest and do like 12 of those. I get injured. I know I'll get injured. I do that. I think there was a Portland running coach I read once said that if you're training for marathons, doing much more than half marathon training isn't necessarily going to help you.
Hmm.
But again, that's if you're not trying to get much faster. But
Yeah, I
enjoy the
mean,
experience. As far as Boston goes, if you get there, just enjoy it. I don't think that you want to miss the opportunity by going out for a PR if the weather is not good. And most years it's not. It's usually pretty warm. And that's the mistake we made the year of the bombing. I texted my friend. They were telling everybody, and there are signs along the way says, slow down, don't try to PR. The night before, I said, maybe we just jog and wave at the crowds. And Jason said, if you can jog and wave the crowds at a sub 3 hour pace, because he's 10 years younger, he's going for sub 3. I go, okay, so he's going for broke. And I did too. I was going for 3:15 that year. And I was right on until 10 miles. And even my half marathon was like a 3:16 so far. It all fell apart.
No, as it does sometimes. Well, Trey, this has been really amazing, and I appreciate your time. And I know it's a quick hit, but I learned a little bit, and I know our listeners will learn a lot. And thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it too.
Thanks everyone for listening to another DFW Running Talk, the Boston kind of series. Really appreciate it. Go to dfwrunningtalk.substack.com to subscribe to the newsletter. Until next time, thanks everyone, and thanks, Trey.
All right. Thanks.